Throughout history, authoritarian regimes have led to the deaths of over 100 million people worldwide, with countless others suffering oppression and loss of freedom. This staggering statistic highlights the devastating impact of dictatorship on humanity. In this presentation, we will explore the lives and legacies of 10 of the most ruthless dictators, examining their rise to power, methods of oppression, and the lasting impacts of their rule. Number 1. Joseph Stalin, Soviet Union. Joseph Stalin rose to power in the early 20th century, ultimately leading the Soviet Union from the mid-1920s until his death in 1953. His regime was characterized by widespread purges, forced labor camps known as the Gulag, and a pervasive climate of fear. An estimated 20 million people died as a direct result of his policies, which included forced collectivization and rapid industrialization. Stalin's Great Purge in the late 1930s targeted perceived enemies within the Communist Party and society at large, leading to the execution of hundreds of thousands and the imprisonment of millions. The state employed extensive propaganda to maintain control and suppress dissent, portraying Stalin as the father of the nation and a heroic figure leading the Soviet Union toward greatness. One of the most devastating events under Stalin's rule was the Holodomor, a man-made famine in Ukraine from 1932 to 1933, which resulted in the deaths of an estimated 3.9 million Ukrainians. Stalin's policies of grain requisitioning decimated the peasantry, leading to starvation and despair. The consequences of Stalin's dictatorship are still felt in Russia and beyond. His story serves as a chilling reminder of the extreme lengths to which leaders will go to maintain power. 2. Adolf Hitler, Germany. Adolf Hitler, the Führer of Nazi Germany from 1934 to 1945, is one of history's most infamous dictators. His totalitarian regime was responsible for the deaths of approximately 11 million people, including 6 million Jews in the Holocaust, alongside millions of others targeted due to their ethnicity, political beliefs, or sexual orientation. Hitler's rise to power was facilitated by a combination of economic turmoil, nationalistic fervor, and political instability in post-World War I Germany. He utilized propaganda effectively to galvanize public support, promoting the idea of Aryan superiority and scapegoating Jews and other minorities. The establishment of concentration camps and systemic extermination of millions marked the dark apex of his regime's brutality. World War II, sparked by Hitler's aggressive expansionist policies, resulted in the deaths of an estimated 70 to 85 million people globally, showcasing the catastrophic consequences of his totalitarian rule. Hitler's legacy serves as a powerful reminder of the dangers posed by extremist ideologies and the capacity for human cruelty. Number 3. Mao Zedong, China. Mao Zedong was a revolutionary leader who founded the People's Republic of China in 1949 and ruled until his death in 1976. His policies, particularly during the Great Leap Forward and the Cultural Revolution, led to the deaths of an estimated 45 million people. The Great Leap Forward aimed to rapidly industrialize China through collectivization, resulting in widespread famine and suffering. During the Great Leap Forward, from 1958 to 1962, poor agricultural policies and over-reporting of grain production led to severe food shortages. This catastrophic failure resulted in millions of deaths from starvation. Furthermore, the Cultural Revolution from 1966 to 1967 aimed to purge capitalist and traditional elements from Chinese society, leading to violent purges, public humiliations, and mass executions. Mao's legacy remains deeply controversial. While some view him as a revolutionary hero who liberated China from foreign domination, others see him as a tyrant whose policies caused immense suffering. The scars of his rule still affect Chinese society today, as the nation continues to grapple with its complex history. Number 4. Pol Pot, Cambodia. Pol Pot was the leader of the Khmer Rouge and the Prime Minister of Democratic Kampuchea from 1976 to 1979. His radical communist regime sought to create an agrarian utopia, resulting in the deaths of approximately 1.7 million people, roughly a quarter of Cambodia's population at the time. Pol Pot's government enforced brutal measures, including forced labor, mass executions, and starvation. Intellectuals, professionals, and anyone suspected of being an enemy of the state were targeted in a campaign of genocide. The infamous S-21 prison, where thousands were tortured and executed, stands as a harrowing symbol of his regime's brutality. The Khmer Rouge's reign of terror ended when Vietnam invaded Cambodia in 1979, leading to Pol Pot's ousting. However, the scars of this period remain deeply etched in Cambodian society. The ongoing process of seeking justice for the victims and reconciling the past continues to be a challenge for the nation. Number 5. Idi Amin, Uganda. Idi Amin was the president of Uganda from 1971 to 1979, and his rule was characterized by brutality and human rights abuses. His reign is estimated to have resulted in the deaths of 300,000 people through systematic killings and ethnic cleansing. Amin targeted political opponents, ethnic minorities, and anyone perceived as a threat to his rule, creating an atmosphere of fear and suspicion. Amin's policies led to economic decline and instability as he expelled thousands of Asian Ugandans who were vital to the economy, resulting in widespread poverty and chaos. His erratic behavior and militaristic rhetoric gained international attention, as Amin often portrayed himself as a champion of African nationalism. The regime's eventual downfall in 1979 led to a period of instability and violence, as Uganda struggled to recover from years of oppression. The legacy of Idi Amin is one of fear and trauma, as survivors of his regime continue to struggle with the impacts of his brutal rule. His story serves as a stark reminder of the dangers posed by authoritarian leadership and unchecked power. Number 6. Francisco Franco, Spain. Francisco Franco ruled Spain from 1939 until his death in 1975, establishing a fascist dictatorship following the Spanish Civil War. His regime was marked by severe repression of political opponents, resulting in the execution of an estimated 200,000 people and the imprisonment of countless others. Franco sought to repress regional identities and eliminate leftist ideologies, leading to a culture of fear and censorship. During his rule, Franco's policies aimed at economic autarky led to widespread poverty and hardship, with many Spaniards facing food shortages and unemployment. The regime promoted nationalist propaganda while stifling dissent through violent repression. Franco's death in 1975 paved the way for Spain's transition to democracy, but the legacy of his rule continues to spark debate and division in contemporary Spanish society. Franco's oppressive tactics left a lasting impact on Spain, as many survivors still bear the scars of his brutal regime. The cultural and political divisions fostered during his rule persist, influencing Spain's ongoing struggle with its past. Number 7. Kim Il-sung, North Korea. Kim Il-sung was the founding leader of North Korea, ruling from 1948 until his death in 1994. His totalitarian regime is estimated to have resulted in the deaths of between 1.5 to 3 million people, primarily due to political purges, famine, and oppressive policies. Kim Il-sung established a cult of personality, portraying himself as the great leader and infusing his regime with a fierce nationalism. The Korean War, 1950 to 1953, significantly shaped Kim's rule, as the conflict led to widespread devastation and loss of life. Following the war, his government instituted a system of labor camps, where perceived political enemies were imprisoned and subjected to brutal conditions. The famine in the 1990s, exacerbated by government mismanagement and isolationist policies, resulted in the deaths of hundreds of thousands, if not millions. Despite Kim Il-sung's death in 1994, his legacy continues to influence North Korea, as his family maintains a grip on power. The cult of personality surrounding him persists, with his image and ideology continuing to dominate North Korean society. Number 8. Muammar Gaddafi, Libya. Muammar Gaddafi ruled Libya from 1969 until his death in 2011, establishing a regime characterized by authoritarianism and human rights abuses. Estimates suggest that Gaddafi's regime led to the deaths of around 30,000 people through political repression, including executions and enforced disappearances. Gaddafi's policies aimed at consolidating power often involved brutal crackdowns on dissent, Particularly during the Arab Spring in 2011, the civil war that ensued led to further violence and chaos, ultimately resulting in Gaddafi's brutal murder by rebel forces. Gaddafi's regime is also marked by his attempts to promote Pan-Africanism and his controversial foreign policies, including support for various militant groups. Despite being overthrown, Gaddafi's influence continues to shape Libyan politics as the country struggles to find stability in the aftermath of his rule. The power vacuum left by his ousting has led to ongoing conflict, highlighting the challenges of transitioning from dictatorship to democracy. Number 9. Saddam Hussein, Iraq. Saddam Hussein was the president of Iraq from 1979 until 2003, leading a regime marked by extreme violence and oppression. Estimates suggest that his rule was responsible for the deaths of approximately 250,000 people, primarily through political repression, warfare, and ethnic cleansing, particularly against the Kurdish population. Hussein's aggressive policies, including the Iran-Iraq War, 1980 to 1988, resulted in significant loss of life and devastation. The conflict, fueled by territorial disputes and ideological differences, led to the deaths of an estimated 1 million people. His use of chemical weapons against the Kurdish population during the Anfal campaign in the late 1980s exemplifies his brutal tactics, leading to thousands of deaths and displacements. The US-led invasion of Iraq in 2003 ultimately resulted in Hussein's capture and execution, but the aftermath of his rule has left Iraq in a state of turmoil. The sectarian violence and instability that followed his removal continue to affect the country today, raising questions about the long-term consequences of his authoritarian rule. Number 10. Benito Mussolini, Italy. Benito Mussolini was the founder of Italian fascism and ruled Italy from 1922 until his downfall in 1943. His regime is estimated to have led to the deaths of approximately 400,000 people, including political dissidents, ethnic minorities, and those targeted during the Italian invasion of Ethiopia. Mussolini's government employed propaganda to promote the ideals of fascism, emphasizing nationalism, militarism, and the glorification of the state. His aggressive foreign policies and alignment with Hitler during World War II contributed to widespread devastation in Italy and abroad. Despite his eventual downfall and execution in 1945, Mussolini's legacy remains a subject of debate. His regime's impact on Italy and its lasting effects on Italian society continue to be analyzed as the nation grapples with its historical memory of fascism. The lives and legacies of these 10 dictators serve as a stark reminder of the dangers of absolute power and the devastating consequences of authoritarian rule. Their stories illustrate how unchecked authority can lead to unimaginable suffering, shaping the course of history and leaving lasting scars on societies. By understanding their actions and the impact they had on millions of lives, we can remain vigilant against the rise of similar regimes in the future.